I want you to imagine for a moment that you are there. It's cold. It feels freezing. Possibly if it was light enough, you would be able to see your breath, but it isn't, as the sun hasn't yet risen. It hasn't even started to lighten the sky on the horizon. 2 days ago, your whole world fell apart. The teacher you'd been following for some years after he cured you from the mental torture you'd been suffering. The man and his followers whom you had been supporting with money from your own resources because you could see the impact he was having on those around him. This person who drew people to him through the love he showed. This centre of your life has been ripped away from you. You saw as he was taken away. You heard the crowd who only days before had cheered and welcomed him into Jerusalem. This same crowd you heard call for him to be crucified. You followed as he was led. Dragged might be a better way to describe it, as he was weakened from the beating he received. You heard the dull ring as the hammers struck nails into his wrists and ankles. You kept watch with the other women as his breathing became shallower, as through great effort he managed to speak not words of hate or curse, but words of forgiveness and love. Through the blurring of your tears, you saw him die and be lowered from the cross and taken to be lain in a tomb hewn out of rock. You saw the stone rolled across the entrance. You watched these last things done in such a hurry because the sun was setting and the Sabbath was about to start. No time for proper preparation of his body for burial. Someone said it will have to wait until the Sabbath is ended. You've been unable to sleep since that eventful, that terrible Friday. And now, as soon as the sun rises, the Sabbath will end and you can show him the care and respect he should have received. He has done so much for you, has taught you so much, has shown you unconditional love. Now you can do this final act for him. You are Mary, the Mary from Magdalene. And as you arrive, the stone has been moved, his body's gone, the tomb is empty. The emotional turmoil of the last few days have been turned up 100-fold. Who could do such an awful thing? Who would take his body? And as you stand there, totally distraught, someone asks why you're upset. What a question! If only they knew what you'd been through. But of course he does know. He does understand. You realize what he meant when he said he'd rise from the dead. Here he is. Here is your teacher, Rabboni. Here is Jesus. Have you ever wondered why it is to Mary, the Mary from Magdalene, that the risen Jesus first speaks? All 4 gospel accounts tell us that he appeared first to Mary Magdalene. Mark tells us she was on her own. Matthew and Luke say some other women were there with her. And in John's account, Peter and John are at the tomb. But it is to Mary that the risen Jesus first speaks. We don't know very much about this Mary. In Luke, we're told that Jesus drove 7 demons from her. Mark mentions this event when he names her at the empty tomb and the resurrection at the end of his gospel. Luke says that Mary, along with Joanna, whose husband was one of King Herod's stewards, Susanna, and many other women financially supported Jesus and his disciples out of their own means. This suggests that Mary had a source of income, or at least money of some sort. But other than this, we know very little about her. except that all four gospel writers place her at this pivotal moment in the story of Jesus' ministry, at his resurrection. Now, the fact that Mary had her own financial resources is unusual for this period. Yes, some women were financially independent, but they were the exception rather than the norm. Perhaps this is why Luke mentions it in his account. She seems to have had a special relationship with Jesus, as we see from her wanting to properly prepare his body for burial. But this relationship has been distorted over the generations, sometimes by hinting at something more existing between her and Jesus. The Tim Rice, Andrew Lloyd Webber rock opera, Jesus Christ Superstar, contains a song where she struggles singing, "I don't know how to love him," hinting that maybe she has romantic feelings for Jesus. Whilst the Da Vinci Code by Dan Brown goes even further by claiming that she and Jesus were married and had children. But I must add at this point that there is no evidence to support this, and if Jesus had married her, it's highly unlikely that all accounts would ignore this. Nor would Paul have made such a point of extolling the virtues he feels his ministry enjoys by him remaining unmarried. No, these are just popular culture that give a plot to a song or a thriller. But these are not the only misrepresentations or distortions of who Mary is. Far worse was done in 591 AD by Pope Gregory. He branded her a prostitute, albeit one who repented after Jesus healed her. To do this, he conflated Luke's account of her healing from the 7 demons with the story of the woman pouring expensive perfume on Jesus' feet. All 4 Gospels include that story. In Matthew and Mark, the event takes place in the house of Simon the leper, and the woman remains unnamed. In Luke, initially we're told that it is the house of a Pharisee, the Pharisees being that group of Jews who very strictly keep the laws of Moses and are very quick to rebuke those, especially Jesus, if they consider the laws are not being properly observed. Later in Luke's account, we're told the name of the householder is Simon. But the big difference between the accounts of Mark and Matthew and that of Luke is that this Pharisee, Simon, calls the woman who anoints Jesus' feet a sinner. If this man were a prophet, he would know who is touching him, what kind of woman she is, that she is a sinner. John's account is different, placing the event in the house of Lazarus, Martha and Mary, where we're told that it is Mary, sister of Martha and Lazarus, who pours out the perfume. What Pope Gregory in 591 AD did was to state that the woman in Luke's account, the sinner, was Mary Magdalene, perhaps allowing the confusion of a Mary mentioned in John's account, albeit that John clearly stated this is a different Mary, but there are a lot of Marys in the Gospels. And the Pope therefore branded the Mary from Magdalene to be a sinner, and by implication that she was a prostitute, and no doubt suggesting that this was where she got the money used to support Jesus and his ministry. And this slander stuck. For hundreds of years, Mary Magdalene was considered to have been a repentant prostitute. Often in medieval art, she is portrayed with her head uncovered, which was quite a scandalous thing to do at the time. Often with red hair, which was taken to be a symbol of a sinful woman. Though, of course, hair colour doesn't mean this at all. Andy Hamilton wrote a radio comedy called Old Harry's Game, which some of you may have heard. And in that, in one episode, he said that red hair was a sign of being descended from angels. My son, who's a redhead, thought this to be a far more accurate explanation. though I think it might be that we probably have some Viking genes lurking, as redheads have occurred every 4 generations or so in the Routledge family tree. Indeed, in the stained glass window on this side of the church, made in the early 20th century, we have an image of Mary at the empty tomb with beautiful red hair unrestrained by any headdress. This is one of my favourite windows in this church, but it shows that 1300 years on, the slander about Mary persisted. Indeed, it was not until 1969 that the then Pope corrected this error, stating that the Mary of Magdalene who first saw the risen Jesus was not the sinner mentioned in Luke's account of the perfume story. The slander was ended, though of course the art remains. But it does mean that if there's a representation of the resurrection and you see a woman with uncovered red hair, you all now know whom she is meant to represent. I know some still incorrectly confuse Mary as being the former prostitute. As the saying goes, mud sticks. But if you only take one thing away from the talk this morning, I hope it will be remembering the dedicated love and service Mary showed to Jesus. This Mary, who was there when he was crucified. Unlike the men, she was one of the women who stayed with him through his agonizing death. This Mary, who went to properly prepare his body for burial. This Mary, who first saw and recognized the resurrected Jesus as the scriptures were fulfilled and death conquered. This is the Mary depicted with beautiful red flowing hair in art throughout the centuries. Despite the paucity of details about her in the Gospels, this is the person with whom the resurrected Jesus first spoke. This is the Mary who should be lauded and celebrated for her service and faithfulness. Amen.
We're so lucky to have a beautiful day. We're so lucky to have a very beautiful church. Many people were here yesterday doing all the flowers, and thank you. And we're also very lucky to have wonderful musicians, so thank you for your music as well. The church has an electoral roll. It's not the same as the registration, the electoral registration. We have one as well. And this year we're having to renew it. If you've been on the electoral roll, you would have received an email or a letter. And what I'm asking you is, if you haven't already signed up, please can you be doing that this week? It needs to be done by Thursday. You can do it online, or you can take a form. There's some at the back over there. So if you've previously been on the electoral roll and haven't re-signed, I'd encourage you to consider doing that. If you're not on it and you would like to be, you simply have to be baptised and be a member of, feel that this is your church, then please do sign up. The weekend of the 24th to the 26th of May, we're having Wendover Arts Festival. The church is going to be very full of artists from all over the area, and this is going to be a big fundraiser for church. Where there is profit, it will come to us. So we need to be, there's been a group of people working with Deborah Hale and over the last few months to prepare everything. Now's the time where we need to be getting behind it. And we're asking for people who can volunteer to make cups of tea and coffee, to bake cakes, because there's going to be refreshments all of the 3 days that it's going to be on. So I know there's not a list up yet, but please be looking out for that and see if you can support Wendover Arts Festival when it happens at the last bank holiday in May.